and start. Welcome everyone to the Shark Tank for the 12th Leadership ITE class. We have a class of 29 this year, and we have 6 group projects to go through today. We'll be keeping everybody on time. We're going to start in just a moment with the first team. We'll have a 5-minute presentation, and then we'll have 10 minutes after that for each team to go through questions. So please, while the presentations are going, think of your questions. If you want to put them in the chat while the presentation is going or at the end, we'll be looking at that and asking the questions, or you can wait until the end and raise your hand. We'll be running through over the next 2 hours to get through these 6 projects. And then after that, if you'd like to stick around and talk to an individual group about their project, kind of give them some more information, things to look at, any helpful tips, whatever, we will keep the Teams or the Zoom call open afterwards for you to talk individually to groups. If there are any questions, feel free to ask now. We're very excited about the 6 projects that are coming up today. We'll go ahead and get started with Team 1, the Global Lights. Well, as they're pulling up the presentation, we'll turn off our cameras for everybody who's not presenting right now. So if you could turn our camera off, and then during Q&A, you can turn your cameras back on if you have any questions. Take it away.
All right. Everyone can see my presentation, right?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Owayo-Padilla, and I'm eager to share with the Leadership ITE 2025 class our group's presentation, Building the Global District, a guide to expanding ITE chapters and sections worldwide. Right, I'd like to introduce my other group members, including Ashley Orr, David Klebowski, Abigail Flores, and Hasnain Syed. In addition, we wanted to include our DNA natural behavior styles to highlight our diversity. Personally speaking, I benefited greatly from working with these folks and have really enjoyed what we all bring to the table. Right. We wanted to start by outlining our purpose statement and why we decided to pursue this topic. Expanding IT's global reach. So IT has members from 78 countries, but only a handful of chapters and sections. Many international IT members lack access to localized professional communities, networking, and programming. International sections and student chapters add value. Sections and chapters foster localized engagement, technical exchange, and professional growth, extend outreach to new professionals in underserved regions to enhance global impact, and provide a platform to share knowledge and experience of international members to contribute to achieving mobility and safety goals worldwide. However, there are barriers to entry. International members may lack opportunity, resources such as time and money, partnerships, and support to establish sections independently. In addition, formal ITE support is critical to empower international professionals and guide the development of new sections. So our approach to the project is the Global LITE solution, the project goal being to establish an international chapter guidebook, with the target audience being IT members interested in championing IT international chapters. So the approach begins with the Pakistan case study. This includes analysis of the Pakistan section success points and lessons learned. So key actions and considerations we will want to identify that led to their ultimate success include identifying the challenges of making a section or chapter, which may include membership dues, establishing key connections such as university connections, public sector, private sector connections, and also the consideration and development of mentors or an advisory board to help ensure the long-term success of a section. And so the Pakistan section has been around about 15 years at this point, and that is a very valuable knowledge base that they have in their experience. So we feel there's a lot of value in documenting that and sharing that benefit, sharing their experience with the international members to learn from their experience. In addition, there's also a component of our approach to a general international outreach effort to research what has been done in the past. Are there any current efforts done in other parts of the world or other countries that members have attempted or are working on establishing current chapters or sections? And kind of gaming basically our historical research to develop our guidelines. And ultimately weaving everything together into a best practices guide to that takes a combination of the experience of the Pakistan members section, the section members, and also other international efforts, with the understanding that there's no there's likely no cookie cutter solution to every possible location around the world, but we wanted to document and establish what has worked in other countries and share that with IT international membership to contribute to their ultimate success. And in addition to our guidebook is identify areas to focus additional research on. We understand that this is a large topic that includes many considerations and action key actions and understanding the full gamut. So outlining what further areas can be included to lead to the ultimate success of this best practices guide is our goal.
Time.
Great. Thank you, Global Lights. We would love to open the floor to questions. I'll start with a question of my own about the Pakistan case study. Does anybody in your team have a contact in the in that section, or any thoughts on sort of how you would go about doing the research?
Absolutely. Hasnain Syed is from Pakistan. He has good relationships with current board members and membership, and he's been a great resource to give us some insight into some of their experience in establishing that section.
So just want to add something more on top of this, that IT Pakistan chapter starts from the University of Engineering Technology, Lahore. This is my own university from where I graduated with a bachelor's degree. And the professor who started this, so I know a little bit about them, and I know the board members or the advisory board members. So we can get in touch with them.
There's a question from Steve in the chat. Steve, do you want to come off mute for it, or I can read it?
Sure. I just, as I've said in there, growth for the sake of growth is always nice, but will your guidebook incorporate how additional growth, in particular success of global sections, benefits the ITE members at large? And the example I gave in there is, how does a planner or engineer in rural Iowa benefit from launching a new section in India?
Yeah, is a perfect question, Steve, and that's something Ashley, our group member Ashley, really dug into. To really, honestly, we don't want to grow just for the sake of growth. Is to really understand, what is there to benefit, and it's really identifying the value in that, and it's for example, Hasnain shared with us in Pakistan's experience, the value that initial professor saw in developing a local chapter was to improve the technical skills of his peers at the university level, and also to improve the technical skills for the ultimate success of, well, the ultimate goal of establishing better practices in the transportation profession for the country as a whole, thinking like DOT level types of best practices, standards, things of that nature. So that's the benefit for the local community that may not have those pieces in place, so they can gain an understanding of how it's done all over the world and can then translate that to their local community. But in the flip side of what this local country or chapter can share is a better understanding of those practices and how they've incorporated mobility solutions and safety solutions in their own communities, and how that may translate to the world, the overall international membership.
Thanks, and Ben, go ahead. and ask your question.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your presentation, Ryan. I think this is a really great topic. So we've discussed the global district. It seems like it comes up in every board meeting, and my understanding is that really the catalyst to start a new chapter or section, I should say, chapter or section really, within the global district is it usually comes from a student section. And so I'm wondering if there will be any focus on providing guidance on starting a student chapter rather than going straight to that next step of starting a new section or chapter within the global district.
That's a great point, Ben. That it in most cases, yes, it does start from like the grassroots effort of being kind of the mentor and mentees of a university setting. And there in my research that even looking into prior leadership ITE presentations, that is a popular topic is increasing university engagement. So that is, at least I feel like there's been a good amount of research done for that particular avenue of engagement. And I think with translating it to an international step is kind of bridging, making that jump to incorporating the professionals into the student chapters for in going back to Pakistan's experience too. Right now, they have a board of directors, a board of mentors that are all professionals, like seasoned, professionals that may live in Pakistan, that maybe they live outside of the country, but they have that larger real world experience and mentorship that encourages the value for that student membership. So I think having both of those has been shown to have that long-lasting, sustainable approach to establishing a chapter or section.
Let me probe a little deeper. So, and kind of explain a little bit where I'm coming from. So a lot of the discussion that we've had is it's often, or I think it's always been the case for the few sections that we have in the global district. Pakistan, New Zealand, and Australia is another one. And I think those are really the two that we have, that the students first started a student chapter, and those students went on to establish a section. And so I feel like if you don't have the student chapter first, you're never going to get that momentum to actually build a section in a new country.
Of course.
So, Ben, let me add something here. We did some research on the Pakistan chapter already, that they started from the center of Pakistan, which is UET Lahore. That's the university. And the transportation group of that university started the first chapter. So they have other campuses in the other part of the Pakistan. One is in the North Pakistan, one is in the South Pakistan. One is UET Lahore, one is UET Taxila, one is NUST, one is NAD. So those are the four university sections in the Pakistan. So basically, the guidebook we're gonna provide is gonna tell that how it actually started from the scratch, right? You're gonna contact with the professor. He will introduce the sections, the student sections in the universities, encourage the students to be part of that local body. Just also wanna share example that on this TRB, I was at the post session. I was talking to different university fellows from China, from Switzerland. I was asking them about the ITE and are they willing to open a student chapter in the university? And every student which I spoke to, they're kind of interested in it. So I shared the information with them. But those are the things which will be discussed in our guidebook. But we understand that it will start from the student chapter first.
Yeah, and I think if I may chime in here too, like I think it is important to continue to frame our project that we are focusing primarily on lessons learned from
see.
the section in Pakistan, right? So, we'll reflect on the history. It's going to be a, a
Yes.
history lesson, kind of unearthing how did, this section kind of, start from the ground up, whether that is, obviously involving universities, but maybe trying to distill out of that case study, a series of best practices that can maybe be applied to other areas. This is very much a first step in probably, a long series of research that would expand beyond Pakistan itself.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for that context.
Okay, so one of these questions popped in before this comment from Ashley. So we don't have to reiterate some of the response, but from John, why not examine the A and Z section as a case study? And then I'll add on Peter's question as well. Is that I would add the Chinese Overseas Transportation Association on your list of organizations to review. I've been invited to China twice to an exchange program, which was an amazing experience.
To talk towards the New Zealand section as a case study, some of that is just sort of scope, which we can later expand, but in the meantime, we have a direct connection to the Pakistan section, so we wanted to start with the Pakistan section. There is an international survey element that we were thinking about contacting on a broader sense members who belong to these international sections. Define what that value is to them, because there's the difference between being an international member who interacts with the international ITE space, with also being the localized IT chapter within their country of origin. So kind of surveying that's like if you're in a New Zealand chapter, we could reach out and find out what value the local ITE element within New Zealand is to them, as well as what they feel that they are contributing to ITE as well.
Time.
Okay, great. There's a couple other chats, so feel free, Global Lights, to respond to those if you want to, or follow up afterwards. We'll move on to keep everybody on schedule to Team 2, Invite. Go ahead and pull up your presentation and introduce yourselves.
All right. Hopefully you guys can see this fine. And great job to Team 1 there. I wanted to call it out because ours is kind of going to be segueing off of some of their efforts. So first of all, welcome everybody. Welcome Sharks. My name is Jeremy McGuffey. I'm here to present on the Invite team's idea. I'm joined by my teammates here on camera. They're going to wave at you real quick as I call them out. Mark Herman, Justine Hull, Leo Ledesma, and Sarah Peterson. And we're excited to present our idea. And I think this is a perfect time to discuss this too, because as Team 1 had mentioned, the growth of global membership, we have a smaller scope, which is just growing the membership here, in North America, where a core of the existing members are located already. So that's what our project's focused on, is just the significant growth of non-engineers actually within the organization. Let me switch slides here. So as I mentioned, we're focused here on growing ITE membership domestically. ITE as an organization is quite old. I think dating back to 1930, ITE's historically been in an engineer involvement, transportation engineers. There's not been a heavy presence of non-engineers until recently, when ITE began rebranding as a community of transportation professionals. I think that part is important. There's been a significant step forward in that area, particularly with recent efforts to attract planners into the group. Taking a look at the strategic plan too, there is a lot that has to do with growing membership, particularly in the broader spectrum, of non-engineers. And as a non-engineer myself, this topic, hits pretty close. As we discuss transportation topics and safety and mobility, you really want everybody that's involved in that space to be present when those discussions are occurring. So that's kind of at the core of what we want to do. So, as we talk about what ITE can do now, outside of planners, outside of the existing membership, there's a ton of folks that out there that want to be present, that should be present. These would include policy professionals, grant and funding professionals, technicians, professors, developers, management in general, anybody along what I would call the supply chain of highway delivery. So, I don't want to tell you what you already know, and certainly all of this is stuff that as an ITE member or employee, you're already well aware of. But these are things that, as a new member myself, these are the things you want to focus on. So people always ask, "What's in it for me?" And also for the ITE folks, what's in it for you? And I'm sure I'll get some questions about these, but as a new member, making this stuff clear, what's available, the resources, what am I getting out of my membership? That stuff is going to come into play quite effectively when we start marketing to these non-engineers. Everybody's busy. Everybody has things that they're responsible for, but how can we engage with them and make this actually worth their while? And I think that just in the short time that I've been involved with ITE, that it's very clear, particularly with the networking and the events that go on, but also with the resources that are available. And then on the ITE side, you definitely get a much broader discussion going on whenever you have folks that aren't just engineers in the room or just planners in the room. I think that it's important to have people across the spectrum so that you actually get a much more diverse discussion going on. So our proposed deliverable is essentially a playbook that's gonna spell out some of the strategies that we can implement at all levels of ITE to hit this goal of increasing that non-engineer membership. And we'll list out some of the categories of transportation professionals that we want to target as well. Lastly, one of the things that we've noticed is we really want to see options for tracking the makeup of membership. In fact, whenever we were gathering some of the information for this project, we realized it's not easy to get a hold of. Out of the 18,000 current members of ITE, we found that about 5% of them didn't have anything listed on their profiles in terms of whether they're an engineer or not. So we're going off of that right now. 95% had engineer listed in their profile, 5% were blank. So what we're going off of is that less than 5% of the ITE membership are that non-engineer category.
Time.
So I think that's important to go off of. Thank you.
Thanks, Invite. I'll start. I'm gonna go ahead. Karen is this question for, from Karen. How do you suggest approaching these potential members? Is it a just one-by-one invitation, or do you see us getting in front of a larger group of potential members all at once? And what would that larger group be?
I'll speak first, and if any of the other teammates have any input, I welcome that as well. Being that I'm non-engineer myself and being a new member, I think that there are plenty of existing opportunities out there that we can start engaging, today with larger groups, particularly directly with the state DOTs and transportation agencies out there. These are very large organizations. They already have structures in place. And many of them have agency memberships or connections with ITE directly. So it's only a matter of getting the message out to the right folks at those agencies. Additionally, you have trade groups, you have APWA, you have AASHTO that exist and have structures in place to get messages like this out to folks. And I'll say anecdotally, the way that I heard about ITE was through my participation with state DOT, way back early in my career in highway maintenance with Indiana DOT. So that's where I was first, it was put in front of me. And then now that I'm at FHWA, it has become even more prevalent.
Let me add a little bit too. We had discussions about that topic, and we also thought that at the section level, we might be able to reach out to our universities and talk to the non-engineering degree programs and maybe get some of the younger folks involved early on so that they know it's out there and what might be available to them.
I'm going to jump in with a question. Is that all right, Sarah?
Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll read the one from Lindsay.
Awesome. Oh, so Anna Maria and my teams, both of our teams, separate years, touched on the edge of this subject. Her team, I believe Anna Maria was on recruiting folks in the TISMO profession kind of side of the world to ITE. Mine was to recruit non-engineers at the collegiate level. Both of those projects, well, actually, I can't speak to yours so much, but our project at the collegiate level had really seemed to balloon. And I'm guessing that, Anna Maria, you all stayed narrow because there was fear that it could balloon as well. I'm worried that we just need to open it up to everyone is too broad. And so I'm wondering if you had to narrow the scope a little bit, how you would approach that.
We had talked about that. The initial idea we had was to start with a list of potential groups that are not included today. Anything that falls under that non-engineering umbrella, and thought that we might have to potential narrow down. And our tentative focus was more on those that are involved in the policy or grant space as one of our priorities.
Right. And just to add on that as well, I think that was done on purpose, right? To start with a broad umbrella, and then as we start getting advice or see where this might take us. But I think overall, we knew that we were going to have to focus it at some point, but we did want to start off broad and then work our way to maybe this is a section that we need to specify, or what has been done already, and let's kind of work off that and build on another offshoot or something like that. But it was purposely done to start broad, and then let's work our way to a more detailed group.
Yeah, and in fact, we had the discussion that we definitely seek input from the ITE leadership themselves to help push us in the direction that ITE sees as valuable, because we don't want to chase after something that's not going to be fruitful. So if there is a particular group that ITE sees as a great starting point, or perhaps untapped potential, we're definitely willing to hone in on those folks.
Okay, so I'll start from Lindsay. For the engineer versus non-engineer assessment, are there options to select planner or other? Lindsay, is that when you're talking about joining ITE or?
Yeah, joining or updating your dues. Or for those who didn't have anything selected, yes, my question was, is there an option to designate yourself as something other than an engineer?
Our understanding now is that, yes, that is something that you can self-select in your profile.
Okay.
But from experience of our team looking at our own profiles, it's not something that is captured as a whole. There are a lot of, I think, blanks that just is not filled in. So one of the things that we could explore is recommendations that as you renew your dues, you have to make some type of selection so that we can better track that makeup of membership moving forward.
And then from Steve, if any of your target audiences already have a preferred association, is there a concern about stepping on toes? For example, many technicians belong to IMSA. Will we be recruiting members away from IMSA?
I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to look at it. I think all of these memberships and groups should play together. I myself am a participant in as many as I can. And the reason being is, as I mentioned earlier, it's very important to have everybody at the table when we talk about anything to do with safety, mobility, policy, or just making general changes to how we do transportation. So I don't necessarily see it as stepping on each other's toes, but it's certainly an opportunity to share good ideas between all of these groups.
All right, so a couple more questions if we have time. From Hardik, have you thought about IT collaborating with other professional organizations such as IEEE, APWA, et cetera, to reach out to a broader pool of professionals who are not traffic transportation engineers, but are critical to where our industry is moving, i.e. electrical engineers, computer science, technology experts, et cetera. And before you answer that question, just for the sharks on the phone, we'll have a presentation in a little bit that touches a little bit more on this. So we'll have two separate projects, one kind of focusing on this versus.
Sure. And thank you for the heads up on that. As I already mentioned, yeah, I think that some of these organizations are clear wins, early on. APWA, AASHTO, they're large enough that they have a great pool of membership already that we can, tap on. So I'm not gonna, keep hitting that nail. I think it's a good opportunity already.
And then from John, 2 comments. A recent member survey by ITE indicated that about 30% of our membership align their work activities in transportation planning. Is your playbook focusing on a specific level of ITE, section, district, or international?
So that's actually one that we wanted to keep a little bit broader. With the playbook, one thing that we had talked about is having a few implementable strategies at all levels of ITE. That way you can pull from it as needed. So if leadership has the capability to implement one of these, they can implement it. If the districts, councils, committees have opportunities to implement, or if they have that time to allocate to implementing one of these, they will also have strategies that are specific to their level of the organization that they can pull from.
All right, any other thoughts from the sharks, or any other closing thoughts? If not, thank you very much. Invite.
Thank you.
We will we'll move on to Unite Locally, or Team 3.
Perfect. Well, you can see my screen there.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, welcome everyone. Our presentation is actually another great segue from the Invites presentation, so pretty excited about that. But my name is Brianna Jackson, and I'm with Associated Engineering in Vancouver, Canada, and I'm presenting on behalf of my team, Unite Locally. My team members are Grady Porter with the City of Springfield, Ray Stephanie with Y2K Engineering, Sophie Gamad with AECOM, and Sakot Hossein with WSP. And we're going to be presenting on our idea of uniting sections locally to drive membership insights forward. So our team name, Unite Locally, embodies what our project is setting out to do: create a dashboard to visualize engagement at the IT section level. We have found that sections are disconnected from membership information, whether that be event attendance, demographics, membership trends, and things like that. One section might have a unique event that regularly performs really well and has really good attendance and a good mix of demographics. Meanwhile, another section somewhere else may be finding that they're struggling to get enough people to their events. And maybe it's that they only get consultants, or they're not getting a good mix of folks attending these events. So the big thing is that these sections might not even know what each other are doing or where to start learning about what their breakdowns are, what that information is, and how that compares to other folks around the country. So yes, sections do create annual reports, and these are submitted to IT, but we see an opportunity to better leverage the information in those section reports. Even if the information is utilized at the national or district levels, we get a sense that the section event information is not shared effectively between the different sections, and it can kind of end up with sections feeling a little siloed. So we see an opportunity to create some more connections between the sections. What we want to do is develop a dashboard using ITE membership data and section reports to provide insights into the membership trends, event attendance, and demographics that can then be used by the section leaders, current members, and also new members, basically anyone that wants to access this information. So this online dashboard will merge various information and data sources like annual reports, membership data, section information. The dashboard will empower members and section leaders to deepen local community engagement, basically helping leaders get insight on key section data. It'll provide actionable insights for better event planning and improved precipitation, using data to support the section leaders to plan for those events and create the opportunities for people participating. It'll help strengthen that IT network by fostering data-driven connections, and helpful data insights can be viewed all in one location. Finally, it'll facilitate cross-section collaboration to share success and gaps, opening doors between the different sections to connect, learn, and adapt. So how will we create this dashboard? What we plan to do is dig into the data available within the different section annual reports and with IT membership data and gather this all together. It's kind of one of those things that we can help break down that information that is available and have it in one place. Using the tool called Power BI, it's a really user-friendly tool, both as a creator and a user, and it can be used to merge different kinds of data together, essentially linking those annual reports and the membership data and showing those relations between the data. It's essentially a graphic data hub that this can provide. It's super easy to use, like I mentioned, and it can be embedded right into a web page that's then accessible for all users. So what we're proposing is that we'll deliver a starting template for this dashboard based on the available IT information and data, along with a one page of key takeaways and essentially a user guide as that first step in providing that information to the sections and having this tool that sections can then utilize. From there, our hope is that IT can then implement systems to upkeep and expand on the dashboard to allow for ongoing data updates and scalability. I think this is a great starting point, but the more data that we can put into the tool, the better it can present that information to section members and leaders and folks like that. So we really do see this as a valuable tool for sections across the organization, just helping to better connect everyone with information as that starting point. So we're happy to take any questions that everyone has at this time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Unite Locally. The first question we have came in from Lindsay. Does ITE currently have a Power BI license? If not, what would this cost be to ITE annually?
Brianna, I can jump in if you'd like.
Thanks.
I think what we're envisioning is that that end product, that dashboard template in its state as we leave it, is something that could be published with a link so that folks could access it just without that license. It would just be available through an online link. And then if somebody within the ITE network was going to continue to update that, Power BI is part of the Office 365 platform. And so from a licensing standpoint, it's pretty cheap. I think last time I checked, it was like $9.99 a month. That was an add-on cost to an existing Office 365 license, if that's how the Microsoft suite is something that IT is using. But if not, that would be something else to consider.
And from Peter, I'm curious if this would include info on sponsorship programs to keep local sections financially strong.
I can answer that.
Sure.
So sponsorship could be one of the item we could include so that a different section knows what level of sponsorship other sections typically receives. There are many sections that does not have a sponsorship as well. So sponsorship could be one of the element of our information that we are going to include.
And just to chime in, the fields that we had kind of initially pitched as part of this were things that we knew there was consistent data available. We know sections are doing annual reports and that's accessible. We know that membership data is accessible. The challenge with sponsorship information is it would be great to be able to understand and glean insights from other sections, but I think to my knowledge, that would need to come more from like a section by section reach out and have more direct conversations at the section level to be able to understand that data set as opposed to kind of like link existing data sets.
Yeah, if I might just add, I'm really curious if this group could make recommendations for section reports that would help us as well. So, I mean, I think that's this notion of this connection between industry and vendors would also be really intriguing to get some insights on.
Yeah, I think that's really great. Basically, part of that kind of one pager can be our recommendations on information that could be really good to gather. And you're right, the annual report could be a great opportunity to get that in an organized manner, especially if we're already going to be linking to them. Thank you for that recommendation.
Sort of in the same vein, a question for Maggie. Do the section reports all follow the same format? As far as I know, section reports are PDF documents. Are data easily extractable from these reports?
Yeah, Shofik, do you want to explain a little bit on that side?
Sure. We so far we haven't seen the data. What is the format or what kind of data source we have? We talked with some of the IT folks just to get an idea what kind of data we may have, and what we have realized so far is we have a data source from all these reports. If it's a PDF format or the Word format, we haven't presented this idea on this Shark Tank pitch, but we have an idea using AI to process the data so that we can use the process data at the Power BI tool. So data processing might be an option if the data is not processed already. So it just totally depends on what kind of data we have. We are supposed to, and we are planning to start coordinating on those data collection, and that can go for any of the sponsorship programs or any of the other data that we can get suggestion from adding into the Power BI tool. It just depends on how much data we have, what kind of data we have, whether it's processed or not, and if we need to do the data processing, we are planning to using AI, using different other tools to process the data for our use.
Yeah, and the goal is to, if they are in a PDF format, I think part of the impetus for this project was to try to make those a little bit more functional, to make it feel less like a report to national ITE for the sake of the report, and more of a tool that we can use at the section level to understand insights from other sections as well. So if they are in that static PDF form and not in a tabular data set, I think that's part of that's a value add as well, as far as we see it, because it kind of brings a little bit more of a dynamic use to that annual report that's already happening.
Comment from Hardik: having peer-to-peer exchange between very active section and a section that may be struggling but has aspirations to continue to keep members engaged is a thought to consider.
For sure. And it is one of our considerations we are coming up with this is, I think there's always been that opportunity on an informal scale for different sections to connect, but there's a bit of that feeling of being siloed, and maybe this can help at least start getting those gears turning, finding a section on the dashboard that is doing something that you're interested in. And that's that kind of foot in the door, that opportunity to then create that connection and get those insights and work together with that section if it's something that would be beneficial to your personal section or cases like that.
Okay, a few more comments as we're going. Extracting data sounds like a labor-intensive effort, both for the initial effort and continuing annual effort if this dashboard continues to be used. Any thoughts on that?
So like Shavik mentioned, utilizing AI to help extract the data will reduce the effort involved in that. And we can use that to our advantage to help compile the data into something that can be input into the Power BI dashboard. And so that's where we're going with that, is how can we simplify the task and reduce the efforts to actually get that valuable data. And then as we look at how can we maybe improve these annual reports, then that could be also items that we discuss in our findings in that key takeaway report. But upfront, we have considered what the data could look like and how much effort is involved. So we've got the ideas to utilize tools to help reduce our efforts in that.
From John, I think this is a really good project idea to help connect sections with each other. Many of our members will primarily experience IT directly through section activities and meetings, and sharing ideas is very, very helpful in program planning and keeping events fresh. I'll read through these comments. So we can.
Do you want me to read them?
Go ahead.
Sarah,
Go
I'll
ahead,
give you a
Beth.
break. All right, from Kate, comment. I think this will be great for sections and also has applications for student chapters. Certainly. I don't know if you all have thought about that at all and want to comment on it.
For now, we decided to keep it at that section level just to not expand our scope too much. But I think if we figure this out at the section level, there's no reason why we couldn't then, that idea couldn't be expanded to the student chapters as well. I think it would be a fairly easy thing to then take forward and grow. And like we mentioned, the opportunity for scalability would definitely be there.
Absolutely. And I think the next question from Hasnain is which section or chapter will manage? And I think that means moving forward. How would you expect that this is managed moving forward?
I'll answer that one if it's all right, Brianna. I think the intent would be that we structure this in a way that one data source is feeding this dashboard, and we would work with ITE to figure out the file structure so that as that data source is updated, the dashboard is updated to try to make the maintenance piece a little more straightforward. But we would anticipate that that would come from the national team so that all of the section information would be available to all of the sections, but it would be fed by existing data sharing that's already being done by the section. So we try to build that tool in a way that it can reference those existing files to streamline maintenance.
The last comment I see, and feel free if anybody has any other questions to raise your hand. IT could provide instructions for future sections to submit data in a spreadsheet along with the report. We kind of touched on some of that
exactly
as we go,
exactly.
but yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts before we move on?
Time, actually.
Oh, perfect timing. Next, we'll be moving on to Team 4, InnoSafety Solutions. If you would like to share your screen, take it away.
Now I need to get back to mic on, camera on. All right. Hello, everybody. This is Andrew Lewis. I'm with InnoSafety Solutions, and our project is to develop ITE recommended practice on implementing the safe system approach for public agencies. So very different direction from the first three that we've looked at. Here's our team. So we're InnoSafety Solutions, Alvaro Calle with VHB in Virginia, Ana Hayato with AECOM in Texas. Myself, I'm with the Atlanta Department of Transportation in Georgia. Julie Scanlon, also public sector, Hillsborough County in Florida. And finally, Matt Skelly with Fussin O'Neill in Massachusetts. So this project here comes out of the ITE Transportation Safety Roadmap and Action Plan. And actually talking in our networking event with some of the leaders in CLT, we identified this particular action out of this entire list of recommended actions as one to tackle. So again, that's developing an ITE recommended practice on implementing the safe system approach for public agencies. Just a little overview here or reminder of the safe system approach. It has 5 objectives: safer vehicles, safer speeds, safer roads, post-crash care, and safer people, and 6 principles: that death and serious injuries are unacceptable, that humans make mistakes, that humans are vulnerable, that responsibility is shared, that safety is proactive, and that redundancy is crucial. And just a little bit here on the why. So you can see here our national trend of increasing roadway fatalities in the country. And you can see that share of our vulnerable roadway users and why they might be a focus or should be a focus in implementing the safe system approach. So in terms of our project, this is a bit large. So part of this is identifying our scope and honing in on our scope as well. But first is just doing that research ourselves. Although a lot of us have an interest in safety, none of us are experts in the safe system approach. And so just reading up on what those resources and guides that already exist are, and just familiarizing ourselves. And then alongside that, reaching out, we've got a good network. Like I said, a couple of us are already in public sector agencies that are trying to implement or are already implementing the safe system approach. And so through our connections, maybe through peers here in Leadership ITE, we want to talk to a few other public agencies that kind of have a spectrum there, maybe agencies that are already implementing and have been very successful in using the safe system approach to achieve safer outcomes, maybe agencies that are attempting to implement the safe system approach, but maybe they're not entirely implementing or they haven't seen those positive outcomes. And finally, maybe organizations that currently are not really making an attempt or the safe system approach hasn't been introduced to their kind of safety program yet. So really understand with them, what are the challenges that they face? What are the needs that they have? What are the tools that they might be looking for in order to really successfully implement the safe system approach? Really, what's that gap, right, between being successful at this and not being successful at this? And how can we fill that gap? And then finally, the development of whatever our deliverable will be, some sort of tool that might be a web page that lives on the ITE website. That might be an application that we develop that can connect public agencies to these resources and hopefully to each other as well. So just a closer look at what we're envisioning right now. Now, this is going to be very reactive to listening to public agencies, hearing what those needs really are. That might just be a couple of these. That might be a few of these, but things that we envision our tool being able to incorporate for agencies to find resources about the safe system approach, for them to share information about what they are doing, what they've done in the past and what the results have been, or what they're planning to do in the future, to see all that same information about other agencies and hopefully results and feedback of what's happened in the past, to be able to get feedback based on that kind of custom fit of, other agencies that have similar population size or are in a similar part of the country or have had similar issues in the past or have a similar legal setup, right? Things that might help it be more kind of custom tailored to their needs and are most likely to be implementable, to be successful. And finally, some ability there for people at the staff level. Now, whether that's really ITE engineer type people, or maybe that's public officials or non-engineers, to be able to connect with individuals at other agencies who are implementing this and interact with them. That's all we have.
Right.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you for that. Go ahead. Anybody who has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. I'll start with, I think that the rise in bike and ped fatalities over the last decade is something that I think about a lot. Is that something you'll focus on? I know that some of the tenets are people being safe in cars, and I think that that's sort of outside of our industry, and we can maybe try to focus a little bit on the people who are outside of cars a little bit. I don't know if that's something that you're looking to focus on or looking at other sort of design solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't talked right to those agencies yet, but we envision that a big gap that we have right now is that maybe agencies are already working on kind of the roadway design aspect. But I think that biggest gap when you look at the safe system is that collaboration with policies, with education, with first responders, with law enforcement officials. So we are anticipating at least that that's going to be a big part of that gap, is kind of the non-engineering side of the safe system approach.
I have a question. How does this fit into ITE's safety roadmap and action plan that was just released?
Yeah, so to go back again, this is one of the actions that came out of that roadmap, was developing an ITE recommended practice. So our hope, we might not be able to, through our project, check that action off as done, but hopefully our project and the outcome of it will help ITE, or kind of set ITE on the path to accomplishing this action that came out of the roadmap and action plan.
And that's not an action that's like a redundant. Yeah, Steve, I was coming to you.
I was getting ready to address that as well. Recommended practice is an official ITE publication term that comes with it a fairly rigorous process for developing an RP. a recommended practice. So you might want to retitle yours to something other than that, because what you're going to do will contribute to the development of the recommended practice, but the full recommended practice, that could take 18 to 24 months. It involves a lot of different stakeholder groups. It involves a lot of rigor to the process. I think what you're doing can contribute to a lot at the beginning, but I think if I were you, I would consider a different term. Don't use recommended practice, but what the steps you're taking seem like they will feed the process, that our safety council will be leading the efforts on the full recommended practice.
Can I ask Steve a follow-up question to that?
Please, go ahead.
Is there something that we could work towards that would be more helpful to that larger process of developing a recommended practice?
I'm sure there is. I don't know off the top of my head. Matt Hardy had to jump off for another call, but the Safety Council has, as part of their action plan for this year, to start down that path of developing that particular deliverable that you have highlighted there on the screen. So I don't know where they are in the process right now, but that's something that Matt can be one of your mentors and help with this particular project, and along with perhaps members of the Safety Council, you guys can collaborate on what their specific needs might be up front, so that your time is productive.
And just sort of echo some of those thoughts. Ben suggested that the topic is very broad and you might want to narrow the focus. From Hardick, IT Roundabout Committee was a great example of initiative that IT took 10 plus years back. Should we emphasize on having subcommittee that is focused on SSA, which can offer the peer exchange and also push for the knowledge sharing that both public and private sectors may not be aware of that already exists out there through FHWA and other sources?
I don't know that that's as much a question for us as possibly other IT leadership that's here on the call. Or if it is, I don't know that we have an answer to it.
Yeah, something to look at, what was done a little bit ago. And I don't know, Hardick, if you have any contacts, you can put in the chat.
Yeah, I think what I was really thinking about that is I agree with maybe what Ben suggested up there. I think the topic seems to be pretty broad, and I think this is trying to maybe make it a little bit narrow and focused more in terms of how you guys can provide that actionable items that can be tangible in near future. I know the recommended practice and some of the other things will take its time, and I think it goes through the process through IT as a product. But again, something to keep in mind. I think Safety Council obviously has been doing a lot in that space. So maybe that could be an area where you guys can talk to the Safety Council chair and see if there are maybe opportunities that can be looked at that you guys can weave into your project as well. I think that's kind of like where I was going with that.
All right, I'm going to jump in with the next comment from John. Your end product seems to be more aligned with an informational report, IR, than a recommended practice, RP, at this time. And an IR can lead to an RP. That's a lot of letters to read. And then Peter said a quick bite would be a good first step. So either of those, I think, are slightly different, narrower directions you could take that you might want to consider.
Again, I think in collaborating with the Safety Council and with Matt, hopefully you guys can refine that and figure out what direction, what product works best.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and add, just for all the groups, like based on these presentations, you will be getting your mentors in the very near future, and one of y'all's is anticipated to be part of Matt's group. So we will make sure that y'all have that connection for sure.
Okay, and from Peter, I would think that if everyone took an agency, it would be very interesting to have case studies that speak to the state of the practice and how we might build on where we are. The bike signals case study was a recent example of this. And another suggestion to reach out to the Safety Council. Any thoughts, either from Info Safety Solutions, a group, or from any of the sharks? Any other closing remarks? Okay, and Megan, be available as a resource to the group on this. So, if you want to make a note to reach out to Megan Mittman.
Yeah, thanks for all the resources and feedback, everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. If there are no other questions, we'll move on. And again, if you have any other thoughts, you can continue to put them in the chat as we move forward or stick around afterwards. We'll move on to Team 5, the LITE. You can go ahead and share your screen and take it away.
It's I think the name's a lot catchier to read than it is to say, but I'll be going with affiliates or affiliates. So what we're looking to present on today is, well, aside from this awesome team of Austin, Emily, Atuza, and then myself as the hanger-on, is the kind of been summed up in the comments coming so far. The comments there's been a lot of comments in the box about the other affiliated organizations and the other organizations that exist in this space. And we certainly recognize that that's that's a big part of the conversation and how the professional growth has to be ongoing. And so we've recognized the opportunity that with greater alignment, we can unify in achieving our goals and have our position be kind of stronger and more representative of what the various organizations need. So the way we're scoping to approach this is using a technique called human terrain mapping, which is a really cool way of saying building out a process in order to understand the interactions between various organizations and the relationships of all those people of various organizations, and map that out against against all the affiliated organizations that interact with ITE at the various jurisdictions. We see this as an alignment across these kind of 5 domains, right? So the organization's visions, the areas of focus, whether or not they're on transportation or on cities. So like myself, I'm a professional planner and a member of ITE, and then you have TAC. There's certainly a lot of other organizations that interact with the various components heavily. Technical versus advocacy and the place of where IT has positioned itself. We know that some of those relationships are going to be with organizations that are far further onto the advocacy scale than we are, and being able to ensure that we're aligning and building that relationship out in a kind of accountable manner to that and to the membership. Organization size, organization reach, and part of this would probably also represent the amount of kind of duplication that we'd be able to find between those, we anticipate or be able to find between those organizations. And then the geography of focus, ITE as a global organization, there's a lot of, especially on the advocacy side, district and section level agencies that we think are out there, that the relationship needs to be managed and accounted for somehow. So the goals are building out a process primarily for identifying affiliated organizations, and because we're reaching back into this existing framework of human terrain mapping, we'll be able to give that process as a firm deliverable at the end. And with that, as new organizations are identified, they can be brought in and understood in that same way. The second would be a scan of the organizations. We would hope to make this as exhaustive as possible, knowing that there's like a time limit on what we're doing here and a bandwidth limit. And so we're going to really focus on being able to get this to be as representative as possible based on the information that we're able to gather. And then we're going to provide some guidance over where the organization's relationship should be held. Should they be at the international level, the district, or the section, and why we think that the key part of that relationship should be held there. So how do we intend to do this? Ideally by accessing the existing databases of the organizations to align. We understand that there is a database and some districts have and maintain one. Some I don't. as robustly. And then we would look to engage district and section leadership. The temptation to engage broader than that exists, but we want to ideally engage the most engaged membership so that we can get responses in a timely manner, and then we have time to process it into a database. And then development of a robust database with a matrix and accountability process. And then, of course, the last point for how we intend to do this is just by generally being awesome, which is, mostly the rest of the group. Thank you. Are there any questions? This is that moment I find out I've been on mute for the last 4 minutes.
Nope, you're good for the whole thing. I'll start with my own question because you kind of talked a little bit about at what level this would be done. Do you envision this being like in one organization could have a relationship at multiple levels? Is that something that you kind of want to think about how that is addressed? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the simple answer to that is yes. I mean, WTS is a key example of that, where there are kind of key relationships, but what we would see, what we would map out is where like the key alignment relationship needs to be held. So maybe, if there's going to be a unified vision, if there's going to be something that's done in parallel, we'd provide a recommendation like this is really a district level, this is really section level, or this is an international, and we need to make sure that this relationship is kind of managed or guided by the international side.
And we have a question from Karen. What is the vision of what we do with these aligned organizations?
Taking a pause to see if somebody else wants to jump in, but I think the hope is that we can provide a framework through which the relationships can be more valuable. Because as we understand how those relationships and those other organizations interact with IT's mandate and what IT is trying to do, we are going to be able to say this is where we fit together, and this is where we can push things in the same direction, and this is maybe where our relationships kind of diverge, and we can let them proceed with something, and we can proceed with something on our own tack. So this will empower the leadership at the various levels to know that they have a bit of a mandate to maintain that relationship. And ensure that we kind of understand where we fit between the two. It's certainly it's applying a somewhat quantitative process to a relationship-based industry, so it's not necessarily exhaustive, but it is hopefully informative.
And I think to add to that is somebody mentioned earlier was stepping on toes, and we're trying to avoid stepping on toes, and where can we make those partnerships? And there's a lot of overlap between a lot of organizations too, so every state's different, every district's different, so just making sure that we can show that alignment and then kind of maximize the potential within that space too.
Thanks, Austin. I'm going to read this next question from Hardik here. Can we look for strengths and weaknesses between us and other organizations we are trying to align with to create opportunities for a common ground of collaboration that adds value to members on both sides?
That's just part of our scope too. We're gonna definitely look into that, and we discussed that how this could be just kind of like even our local chapters as an example, what we could do to look into that specifically.
Hardik, I saw you come on video. Do you have a follow-up to that at all?
No, I don't. I just wanted to be present while they were answering. So
thank you.
I think that's just an area to make sure we can create like a SWOT analysis. I'm sure you guys are probably early on in the process that you will look into that, and maybe that could be something that will be an added value for IT to look into as well.
Yeah, and Beth, I was gonna also add, I know my group, and I think your group probably did it too. One of the 2021 projects had a list of organizations as kind of like a starting point. But then I also know that the STEM committee, the IT STEM committee, was looking at where we can partner on the STEM education side. So that might also be another group that you can leverage, at least like what partnerships have already been researched, and kind of see there where it works with what y'all are looking at as well.
Karen's put a couple examples in the comments. But I'm kind of wondering, going back to her original question, if you think the scope is too broad to include somewhere in your final product, how you think these relationships can be, best utilized, and how we can take advantage of them, more than just more than simply stating here's the organizations we're aligned with. Or maybe that's too broad. Maybe I'm suggesting something that's too broad here.
Sorry, Beth, can you ask that another way?
Yeah, I'm just asking if it's possible for you all to include what Karen suggested here, what her first question was, in your final document.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that's going to fall out as we start to build out the database. I think getting a sense of how strong we could recommend that relationship to be, and depending on some organizations that we're going to be able to we already have a robust relationship with, we can give that perhaps as an example of what like a fully affiliated or aligned or alignment is. But I'm not sure we would want to do the level or have the level of information necessary to like make a like standing actual recommendation more than like an indication, because there's a lot of like relationship testing that needs to happen in there before that.
Absolutely. I'll read Karen's follow-up comment and then we can jump into Kate's question. So Karen said, so for a couple of examples on either end of the spectrum, one, we might sign a letter of advocacy jointly with ASCE for a nominational or notational infrastructure bill. And two, we might hold a joint meeting between New Mexico ITE and ITS sections. Which I think is something that's already happening. Certainly, I've been to T-site meetings that are joint meetings with other agencies, APWA, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kate's question, could it be used to advocate for the safe systems approach?
And if I need to further clarify, just kind of like in the same vein as Karen was saying, like, a letter of advocacy for the national infrastructure bill, or for joining together towards the safe systems approach, and collaborating to see what each organization is doing towards that. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think that could be part of a survey almost to the folks at each level, and then just add that safe system approach nomenclature at the bottom to see how they're aligning, and then we can kind of include that in the program.
Okay, great. Any closing thoughts from the team? I won't butcher your name again. Or thoughts from the Sharks.
Just say it like you want to say it. Affiliates.
That's when you said it. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. I love a good portmanteau. I had a hard time with that one.
I was also just gonna add, like, especially if you go on like the ITE calendar, if there are any districts doing joint meetings, they'll pop up as like the full thing. I know like TechSite and ITS Texas, we do a joint meeting every 3 years. And then like if you want to get deeper into the section side, a lot of sections will then go and report in their section reports what those joint meetings are, if they're not already on that calendar.
Yeah, a comment just came in from John. You might consider focusing the vision to a single area, such as advocacy, member engagement, technical product development, etc. If any of those things really speak to your team, that might be a good way to kind of narrow down the scope.
What we had discussed, and sorry, Sarah, I'm expecting Kathy to shout time at any moment in time, but what we had discussed is, instead of constraining it by a single area, would be constraining it actually geographically. So just picking a district or that we would work in if we were finding that the database was too overwhelming, to make sure that the map, as we're calling it, the map reflects across practices and works kind of in all domains. But if we find that the database is too cumbersome and too large to work with in our time, I think we'd have that. I wonder, John, if you have any thoughts on that as an alternative approach to your comment.
I think you're going to find your database is pretty darn big.
Yep.
And you're going to need to focus it. However you want to focus it, whether it be geographic, I guess the caution there might be your geographic area may be skewed because of what happens in that particular area based on politics, conditions, whatever, people in California probably have a little different view on things than people in Minnesota.
Time.
Great.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you very much. We will move on to our last group of the day, Next Gen Navigators. Tyler, go ahead and share your screen. Take it away.
Okay. And good afternoon. We are Next Gen Navigators, formerly known as LITE Team 6. Our team is comprised of Leslie, Stephen, Maggie, Destiny, and myself. Our project title is IT's Roadmap to Supporting and Retaining Young Professionals. We want to start by sharing a few stories with you all about some of the common challenges we hear from our young professionals. First, let's meet Eli. He recently graduated from college with a degree in civil engineering and has been working at Next Gen Consulting Engineers for a year and a half. Eli was an active IT student member during his college days, but he has been unable to attend his IT sections meetings because his employer does not pay IT membership dues for entry-level employees, and his work commitments do not allow him the time to attend the meetings. Let me introduce you to Nicole. She has been working on traffic design tasks for the last 5 years. She told her manager that she likes traffic design work, but would love for a chance to try some traffic analysis tasks. Her manager tells her that budgets are too tight and they have too many deadlines that are pressing and need her to continue to focus on her traffic design tasks. Nicole's story is very much like my own. Last year around this time, I started asking to get involved with traffic analysis tasks while I was the traffic design manager and was told no, I needed to focus on only traffic design. After 4 years at my previous firm, I decided to move on to a different company and stayed in the transportation field. However, changing to a new employer worked out for me, but doesn't always work out for everyone. Like Josh, he was a transportation engineer who had spent 6 years at a mid-sized firm, but felt his career had plateaued due to limited advancement opportunities. Despite his experience, there were few chances for promotion or to take on leadership roles. Frustrated with the lack of growth and new challenges, he decided to transition out of the field. Josh moved into project management within construction industry, seeking better leadership opportunities and a more dynamic career path. Stories like the one we heard from Eli, Nicole, and Josh are far too common in our industry. There are a few common challenges that young professionals continue to face as identified by the IT Younger Member Committee. The first is a lack of support from their employer to participate in IT, whether due to financials or an unhealthy work-life balance. Next, we hear that many young professionals get pigeonholed into one aspect of transportation when they'd rather have a wider variety of work. As they move further into the careers, they commonly find that they are limited career growth paths within the company. All of this has led to our field having a difficult time with retaining young professionals. So you might ask, how can IT address the concerns and support the young professionals across the organization and within our field? Next Gen Navigators are here to help. We want to develop a roadmap to address the key concerns and lay out how to implement them. So one of my roles within IT is being the International Younger Member Committee co-chair. Over the last few years of being co-chair and a committee member, I've seen multiple LITE groups create fantastic materials for the YMC. The problem is that we typically shelve these documents until we have time to refine and figure out how to implement them for our YMC at the international level and the DSC levels. That's why Next Gen Navigators looks to identify some of the issues that young professionals face within our profession and see if there are existing activities that can help address some of the issues. We also want to see if there are some of these activities need to be improved, updated, or if new activities need to be created. The first thing we plan to do once we get your support is to review all previous LITE projects that have to do with young professionals. Then identify councils, committees, or young professionals that can help support the activities or benefit from the roadmap. We anticipate a lot of collaboration with the IT YMC and possibly some of the DSC YMCs. After that, we'll create a roadmap and distribute to those that we have identified could support and benefit from it. Thank you all for your time. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions, feel free to raise your hand or hop right in. I like this project a lot. I've certainly seen people run into these problems. Tyler, I know you're heavily involved in young member groups. Do you see a lot of excitement from young people who are just like looking for an opportunity, or are you seeing sort of COVID kind of hitting a lot of people, like not a lot of bandwidth for getting involved right away?
So I see a little bit of two different groups. Some are within the group that kind of graduate around 2019 to like 2023, where they're really not sure where to get plugged in at. They kind of got disoriented. They kind of missed that whole new new graduate feel where a lot of people are wanting to get engaged with you, getting to know you and all this. And so they don't really have that sense of connection like a lot of us do. And the other side is you see a lot of people who actually are involved that sometimes go through a lot of burnout because unfortunately during COVID, a lot of people were working 60+ hours, and it just became one of those times where, well, professional organizations kind of came at the chopping block. And even though I've kind of tried to get some of those people back involved, they're just kind of burnt out and they're not really sure what they're doing with their career in the sense of looking at other opportunities, which is always unfortunate because a lot of them are great people.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in with a question from Steve to clarify. Will your roadmap document existing activities and recommend new initiatives, or one or the other?
So it'll do both. What we want to do is we want to lay out what is already there that we can connect the young members with so that they can go ahead and identify, oh, I want to get more informed about bike ped things. Okay, well, there's the councils and their webinars that you can go ahead and do. While there's other aspects thinking, okay, well, what if I want to go ahead and start presenting? What if I want to go ahead and do these soft skills? There are some activities I know are being developed, but we want to go ahead and make sure that they're more centered towards young professionals than what is everything else, and making sure that we have a good kind of fully encompassed like game plan. We don't want holes in the game plan.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump in with Karen's question too. Can you explain how the roadmap might change the case studies that you opened the presentation with?
Does anyone want to take this one, or you want
I can jump in here, Tyler.
Yeah.
So for one example, one thing we were tossing out about was in that first case study with Eli, where his support maybe doesn't see the benefit of ITE. Maybe one of the initiatives that we recommend is kind of like a one-pager, a flyer that really speaks to the employer, why the benefit is, so he can take that to his employer kind of and show, hey, this is why I should be a part of this organization. And so that's just kind of like one of the thoughts that we've had, but could be developed to fit in the other areas as well as the project progresses.
Destiny, I'll comment. My group did that from a like general perspective, but we hit on like we did a one-pager on how it benefits the employee and then how it benefits the employer. So definitely dive into that one. I would recommend to kind of see where you can start. And it's not perfect. This was not great, but it's a good starting point if that's what y'all are thinking.
Great, thank you.
A comment from John, great topic. You might consider checking in with our employer councils for insights. Don't forget the young professionals and academic institutions.
Thank you for that comment. I would say, kind of tying in with what Destiny was saying and building on that, is the last two examples are, I guess, a little bit more touchy subjects, because as companies, we're all growing and we're adding staff. As we're going through these transitions in our careers, some companies are worried about how involved some individuals are. So how do you show that ITE is still benefiting that company and allowing the young engineers to grow and different tasks can really benefit the overall transportation profession. And so it's going to be a balancing act as to how to come up with solutions that still support everybody, and we have the buy-in with the organizations that have been so tied in with ITE since founding.
Great, thanks. Another thought from Hardik. Are you helping identify things that ITE can do to provide brief benefits summary to employers, public or private sector, with some success story examples and how it benefited the employer?
Yeah, I think Tyler, I can take this. I think that's a good suggestion. I think we haven't discussed this in detail, but I think it's a good suggestion that we'll take on board and see how we can use that to also support what Destiny just suggested, that we provide a brief summary of what the benefit will be for the employer and also for the employer as well. I think if we have that survey, that would help. And then again, the success stories, just like we showed the challenge stories, we can show the success stories.
Yeah, and I think one thing I would just add on that is I think most of us on this call would probably say this, that our story started with a student chapter, right? And how we had someone who was there to help us lead through that. I think that's maybe the angle. It's again, I think Stephen probably mentioned that every company has challenges, and I think as long as you are being very transparent with the younger members, that yes, sometimes it is the production and making sure that you're meeting clients' deadlines and whatnot comes into the way of when you're trying to go out and volunteer for things, or maybe be out and about with a lot of IT events or activities. But I think it is also very important that they are aware that there is support out there. It's just that they sometimes have to figure out that balance. What I do with my team is to make sure that you need to stay engaged. That's how you're going to build your network. It's important. But then at the same time, if there is a project need that comes along the way, I think they have the power to make that decision so that they feel comfortable about they are doing the right thing one way or the other. So.
Thanks, Hardik. I'll read this from Peter, Sarah. That's all right. From Peter, will we understand if our industry is losing people because we limit the salaries in some cases? How do we make sure we're attracting the best possible professionals?
So I can jump in on this one. So the industry salaries is a very interesting topic, and that's going to also vary based off of the different professions that we have as part of transportation professionals. Public and private sector right now are definitely struggling across the board with who is going to fit into which role and how those work together. Here in Memphis, I was the transportation administrator for the city for a number of years, and leaving to be on the private side meant I got a 2 times raise over what I was making in the public side. A lot of the public institutions cannot keep up with larger private firms, especially, and larger private firms right now are increasing salaries greatly for different roles that are changing the dynamics of how we all function. So understanding where we are as a baseline across the country for different job types and different salary ranges, making sure that we are keeping up with inflation within our areas, but also monitoring that information that's coming out regarding salaries is something that's going to be sustainable, and companies are not overfilling their employee roles to a point to where as soon as something happens with a large grant, they're having to let go of a number of employees, making sure that we have smart business practices about how we grow and how we're keeping these people involved. Otherwise, a lot of these younger people, when the economy shifts, are going to be cut loose and they may go to other places.
Any other thoughts on this project? Suggestions for narrowing the scope. I think that's a really interesting conversation on salaries. I don't know if that's exactly where you were intending to go, but it's always something to keep in mind. Somebody else from Hardick. I think cross-training younger employees in all areas of the business is important to make sure talent is not impacted when there are challenging times in the industry.
Not only that, but a lot of young professionals get bored after 7 years of the exact same tasks. They want a variety. They want to be able to learn a lot of those things. And now there are some who want to stay in a specific niche, but it's also two pronged in that sense. Like you're helping retention, and then you're also helping make sure that they have a whole breadth and a better engineer.
Time.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Next Gen Navigators, and thanks for all the teams and all the sharks for joining today. I think now that we've separated the Shark Tank from the first weekend, we give the teams a little bit more time to look into their ideas. We give a good opportunity to sit and focus on this stuff. I think it's provided a lot of really robust feedback. We really appreciate that. I think it makes the projects a lot better. It gives us an opportunity to bring in the board members and staff members and alumni mentors that really make these projects grow over the 6 months that we work on them. So with that, thanks everyone for calling in. If you would like to provide any feedback to the teams, you can stay on the line as we do our debrief, and we can put you in a breakout group with each of those teams, or feel free to reach out to, Beth, Anna Maria, me, Kathy, if you want to talk to a specific group, or if you want to provide your contact info for future getting resources, or you don't have to be an official mentor role to provide feedback. There will be a lot of touch points with the groups over the next 6 months, but we'll see everybody again in the end of June, I think, for final presentations. So if there's any questions for the group, any thoughts from anyone, we'd be happy to hear about it. Otherwise, we like to say good night, unless you're going to stick around to discuss with an individual project. We'll keep Leadership ITE on for a few minutes.